The massive lecture hall fell silent as Dr. Zorak stepped onto the platform. His blue skin shimmered under the lights and his four eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the classroom. Students from 20 different planets sat before him, but his gaze lingered on the human section. "Welcome to Advanced Xenobiology and Survival," Dr. Zorak said. His translator device gave his voice a smooth, deep tone. "I am Dr. Zorax, lead researcher for the Galactic Scientific Coalition. You are here because your test scores were among the highest in the Academy." Jack Miller shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the implied praise. His scores had been good enough to get in, but only just. At 24 years old, he was older than most human cadets, having worked odd jobs across the solar system before applying to the Academy. Next to the brilliant alien students, he often felt out of place. Dr. Zorax touched a control panel on his wrist. Above him, a holographic image appeared, showing a dark, cave-like environment. The students leaned forward. "Today, we begin with the most dangerous predator known to the Coalition," said Dr. Zorax. He tapped another button. The image changed. Something moved in the darkness of the cave. It was hard to see clearly. A shifting shadow with reflective eyes and what looked like rows of teeth or claws that caught the light. The creature moved with unsettling grace for something so large. Several students gasped. A Dravik student in the front row pulled its eye stalks back in fear. "This is the Shadow Maw of Proxima 6, Dr. Zorak said. 53 explorers and scientists have died in encounters with this species. Despite our advanced technology, we have yet to develop effective countermeasures." Jack watched the footage with interest rather than fear. The creature moved like nothing he had seen before, but something about its hunting patterns seemed familiar. "The Shadow Maw hunts using multiple sensory systems," Dr. Zorax continued. "It can detect the electrical impulses from nervous systems. Its outer shell resists most weapons. Its speed exceeds that of most sentient species." Jack raised his hand. Dr. Zorax looked surprised but nodded to him. "Yes, Cadet?" "Miller, sir." "Jack Miller. Does it hunt alone or in groups?" "Alone," Dr. Zorax answered. "They are territorial and solitary." Jack nodded. "And what does it eat when it can't find explorers?" A few students laughed nervously, but Dr. Zorax didn't smile. "It preys on the larger cave-dwelling creatures of Proxima 6. Why do you ask?" Jack shrugged. "Just curious about its usual diet and hunting patterns." Dr. Zorak stared at Jack for a moment before continuing the lecture. He showed more footage of the Shadow Maw, along with diagrams of its known biology. Jack took detailed notes, focusing on aspects the professor seemed to mention only briefly. After the lecture, the students filed out, talking excitedly about what they had seen. Jack was reviewing his notes when he realized Dr. Zorax was standing beside him. "Cadet Miller," the professor said. "Your questions were unusual." Jack closed his notebook. "Sorry if they were off topic." "Not off topic. Unusual in their focus." Dr. Zorax tilted his head. "Most students ask how to avoid or escape the Shadow Maw. You asked about its hunting patterns and diet. Well, to avoid something, you need to understand it," Jack said. Dr. Zorax's upper eyes narrowed while his lower ones widened, an expression Jack couldn't interpret. "Understanding the Shadow Maw has cost many lives," said Dr. Zorax. "The Coalition's official protocol is clear: avoid Shadow Maw territory at all costs." Later that day, Jack sat in the Academy cafeteria, poking at his food while reviewing the lecture materials on his tablet. A tray clattered onto the table across from him, and he looked up to see Olivia Martinez, another human cadet. "Your questions got under Zorax's skin today," she said, sitting down. "If he had skin, that is." Jack smiled. "Didn't mean to. I just find it weird that with all their technology, they're still scared of this thing." "Because it kills people," Olivia said, raising an eyebrow. "Lots of people." "Sure, but so do sharks and bears, and we don't just avoid the ocean and forests forever." Olivia took a bite of her food. "What are you looking at?" Jack turned his tablet so she could see. "The geological surveys of the Shadow Maw's territory. These readings show high geothermal activity in the cave systems. And that matters because, just a hunch, predators usually have weaknesses tied to their environment. I'm wondering if the heat affects it somehow. Olivia shook her head. This is why you barely passed the psychological screening. Normal people hear about a monster that killed 50 explorers and think, let's stay away. You hear about it and start looking for its weak spot. 2 weeks later, Jack's class stood in the loading bay of the Academy's transport ship. Through the viewports, they could see the red-orange surface of Proxima 6 growing larger. Attention, cadets, Dr. Zorax announced, standing before them. We will spend 3 weeks at the research outpost studying the safer life forms of Proxima 6. This is not an exploration mission. His 4 eyes scanned the group before settling on Jack. The outpost is located 50 kilometers from the nearest, known Shadowmaw territory. You will not leave the outpost without supervision. You will not enter any cave systems without explicit permission. Is that clear? The students nodded. Jack nodded too, but his mind was already working on the problem that had occupied him since the first lecture. In his pack, hidden beneath standard equipment, was a small collection of mineral samples he had quietly gathered from the Academy's geology lab. The ship landed with a slight bump. As the ramp lowered, the hot, copper-scented air of Proxima 6 filled the loading bay. The landscape outside was rocky and barren, with strange, twisted formations of red stone stretching toward the dull orange sky. Welcome to Outpost Sigma, Dr. Zorax said. Your new home for the next 3 weeks. The outpost was a cluster of dome-shaped buildings connected by enclosed walkways. As the students filed toward it, Jack paused to look at the distant mountains. Somewhere in those rocky peaks were the cave systems where the Shadowmaw hunted. Dr. Zorax noticed Jack's gaze. Remember my warning, Cadet Miller. The beast that dwells in those caves has killed beings far more prepared than you. Jack nodded, respectfully. I understand, Professor. I hope you do, Dr. Zorax said quietly. Because humans seem to have a particular talent for finding trouble, even when they've been explicitly warned against it. The first week at Outpost Sigma passed quickly. Each day the students ventured out under supervision to study the smaller life forms of Proxima 6. They collected samples from the twisted red plants that grew between rocks and observed the 6-legged lizards that scurried across the hot ground. Jack paid attention to these lessons, but his mind often wandered to the distant caves. At night, he studied the data from previous Shadowmaw encounters, looking for patterns that others might have missed. On the 8th day, as the 2 suns of Proxima 6 were setting, an alarm blared through the outpost. Jack was in the common area, reviewing notes with Olivia, when the sound made them both jump. All personnel report to the main briefing room immediately, came the announcement over the speakers. Jack and Olivia exchanged glances and hurried to join the others. Dr. Zorax stood at the front of the crowded room, his blue skin looking paler than usual. The display behind him showed a flashing red dot on a map of the region. We have an emergency, he said when everyone had arrived. A scout ship has crash-landed approximately 30 kilometers from our position. He pointed to the red dot. The ship's 2 crew members are alive but trapped in the wreckage. One is seriously injured. The map zoomed out slightly, and a shaded area appeared on the screen. Jack recognized it immediately. The known territory of the Shadowmaw. The crash site, Dr. Zorax continued, is 7 kilometers from the entrance to the Shadowmaw's cave system. His 4 eyes blinked nervously. I have contacted Coalition headquarters. A rescue team will arrive in 12 hours. A Vexian student raised a tentacle. Will the injured crew member survive that long? Dr. Zorax's upper set of eyes closed briefly, a sign of distress. The medical data transmitted from the crash is concerning. The injured crew member has suffered severe trauma. Their life support system is functional but cannot provide necessary treatment. The room fell silent as everyone understood the implication. 12 hours might be too long. Is there nothing we can do? Asked Olivia. We're closer than any rescue team. We are not equipped for rescue operations, Dr. Zorax said firmly. And The proximity to the Shadow Maw's territory makes any approach extremely dangerous. But if we took the fastest transport vehicle, Jack said, standing up, we could reach them in under an hour. All four of Dr. Zorax's eyes fixed on Jack. The risk is too great. The Shadow Maw can detect vehicles and is drawn to their energy signatures. The meeting continued, with Dr. Zorax explaining the situation in more detail. The crew members were Daniel Ortiz, the pilot, and Lisa Reeves, the navigator. Lisa was the one with severe injuries. Their small scout ship had suffered engine failure while mapping the far side of the mountains. When the meeting ended, the students were sent back to their quarters, instructed to continue their studies while awaiting news. Jack walked slowly beside Olivia, deep in thought. "You're planning something stupid, aren't you?" Olivia asked quietly. Jack glanced at her. "They could die waiting for that rescue team. And you could die trying to reach them," she countered. "Did you miss the part about the killer shadow monster?" Instead of answering, Jack led her to his small room. He pulled out his tablet and showed her what he'd been working on. "Look at these readings," he said, pointing to charts and graphs. "The Shadow Maw avoids areas with high geothermal activity. Every encounter has been in the cooler parts of the cave system." Olivia frowned. "So it doesn't like heat. That doesn't help us reach a crash site on the surface. It's more than that." Jack switched to another screen. "The soil samples from around the caves contain high levels of this mineral." He pointed to a chemical formula. "And the Shadow Maw's territory stops precisely where the concentration drops below 3%. You think it's sensitive to this mineral?" Jack nodded. "And I've been collecting samples from the Academy labs before we left. If I'm right, this could mask our electrical signature from the creature's senses." Olivia stared at him. "This is crazy, Jack. You can't just go out there based on a theory. 2 people might die if I don't," he said simply. "Dr. Zorax will never authorize this." Jack's expression hardened. "Then I won't ask for authorization." Later that night, when the outpost had grown quiet, Jack packed a small bag. He included medical supplies, emergency rations, a portable scanner, and his precious mineral samples. He wore the standard protective suit designed for Proxima 66, harsh conditions. He was checking the charge on a handheld plasma torch when his door slid open. Olivia stood there, arms crossed. "I knew it," she whispered angrily. "You're really doing this." Jack didn't deny it. "I have to try, Olivia. Dr. Zorax will notice you're gone by morning." "I'll be back by then," Jack said. "With the crew." Olivia stepped inside, letting the door close behind her. "This is suicide, Jack. You know that, right?" "I've studied every report, every piece of data on the Shadow Maw. I know what I'm doing." "No one knows what they're doing with that creature. That's the whole point." Jack continued preparing his gear. "Someone has to try. Those people need help now, not in 12 hours. Olivia watched him for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "How are you even getting out? The main doors are locked at night." Jack smiled slightly. "The maintenance access in Section C, it's only monitored by cameras, which I can loop for a few minutes." "Of course you figured that out," Olivia muttered. She ran a hand through her dark hair, clearly frustrated. "What's your plan if you do make it to the crash site? How will you get them back?" "Their scout ship has an emergency beacon that can be removed. I can bring it closer to the outpost, within range where it's safe to send help." Olivia was quiet for a moment, then she said, "You'll need someone to cover for you here. If they do a bed check or if Dr. Zorax calls a surprise meeting." Jack looked up at her, surprised. "You'd do that?" "I think you're being an idiot," she said. "But I also think those people deserve a chance." She pointed a finger at him. "But if you're not back by morning briefing, I'm telling Zorax everything." Jack nodded. "Fair enough." 20 minutes later, Jack slipped through the maintenance access and out into the Proxima 6 night. The air was cooler now, but still warm enough to feel like a summer evening on Earth. He could see the twin moons casting eerie light over the rocky landscape. In the distance, the mountains loomed dark and forbidding. Somewhere in those shadows was the crashed ship with its trapped crew, and somewhere even deeper in the darkness waited the Shadow Maw. Jack checked his scanner, oriented himself, and began to run. The landscape of Proxima 6 was treacherous at night. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like teeth, and deep cracks in the surface could trap an unwary foot. Jack moved steadily, guided by the glow of his scanner. The twin moons provided just enough light to see the path ahead. 3 kilometers from the outpost, Jack paused at the edge of a wide gully. His scanner showed it was 30 meters deep with steep walls. Going around would take too much time. Never the easy way, he muttered, taking out a thin rope from his pack. He secured one end to a sturdy rock and began his descent into the darkness. At the bottom of the gully, Jack checked his scanner again. The crash site was still 25 kilometers away. He needed to move faster. Ahead, he could see steam rising from vents in the ground, evidence of the planet's geothermal activity. Jack approached the nearest vent cautiously. Hot air blasted upward, carrying the smell of sulfur. He took out one of his mineral samples and held it near the vent. The reading on his scanner changed slightly. Just as I thought, he said to himself. The heat changes the mineral structure. He took out several of the mineral samples and placed them in a small pouch. He hung the pouch around his neck, where the geothermal heat from his body would activate the minerals. According to his theory, this would mask his electrical signature from the Shadow Maw's senses. Jack continued his journey, following a path that took him from one geothermal vent to another. The heat was uncomfortable, but he believed it would offer some protection. Back at the outpost, Olivia couldn't sleep. She paced in her small room, checking the time every few minutes. It had been 2 hours since Jack left. She wondered where he was now, whether he was safe. A soft chime from her door made her jump. She opened it to find Dr. Zorak standing there, all 4 eyes open wide. "Cadet Martinez," the alien professor said. "May I come in?" Olivia's heart raced, but she stepped aside. "Of course, Professor." Dr. Zorak entered and looked around the room. "I was doing a routine check of the outpost systems when I noticed unusual activity at the maintenance access in Section C." Olivia kept her face neutral. "Is something wrong with the access point?" "The security camera footage shows a loop," Dr. Zorak said. "Someone has left the outpost." His upper eyes narrowed. "Where is Cadet Miller?" Olivia hesitated only briefly. "He's sleeping, sir. He was tired after today's field study." "Is that so?" Dr. Zorak's voice was cold. "Then you won't mind if we go to his quarters to verify?" Before Olivia could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the outpost. Dr. Zorak's communication device beeped urgently. "Professor, we're receiving a transmission from the crash site," said a voice over the device. "It's being routed through a portable communicator." Dr. Zorak's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in surprise. "Put it through." There was a moment of static, then Jack's voice came through clearly. "This is Cadet Miller. I'm approximately 15 kilometers from the crash site, requesting any updated information on the crew's condition." Dr. Zorak made a sound Olivia had never heard before, something between a gasp and a growl. "Cadet Miller, return to the outpost immediately. That is a direct order." "Sorry, Professor," Jack replied, his voice calm despite the static. "I'm already closer to the crash site than to the outpost. Turning back now would waste valuable time." "This is beyond insubordination," Dr. Zorak exclaimed. "You are heading directly toward the territory of the most dangerous predator known to the Coalition." There was a pause before Jack answered. "Actually, I have a theory about that. The Shadow Maw seems sensitive to certain mineral compounds found in the planet's soil. I'm carrying samples that should mask my electrical signature." Dr. Zorak turned to Olivia, his blue skin now pale with anger or fear. She couldn't tell which. "Did you know about this?" Olivia nodded slowly. "He believes he can reach the crew before the Shadow Maw detects him. On the surface of Proxima, Fursi, Jack continued his journey. He turned off his communicator after Dr. Zorak's outburst and picked up his pace. The crash site was getting closer. The terrain became more difficult as he approached the mountains. The path narrowed, winding between tall rock formations. Steam vents became more frequent, making the air hot and thick with moisture. Jack's scanner beeped. He was now 10 kilometers from the cave system where the shadow maw lived. He checked his mineral pouch, making sure it was still warm from his body heat. Suddenly, his scanner showed movement ahead. Something large was moving among the rocks. Jack froze, crouching low behind a boulder. He held his breath, waiting. A large creature with 6 legs emerged from behind the rocks. It wasn't the shadow maw. It was too small, only about the size of a large dog. Its skin was leathery and gray, and it had no visible eyes. Jack recognized it from his studies. A cave crawler, one of the native animals of Proxima 6, and one of the shadow maw's usual prey. The cave crawler stopped, its head turning toward Jack's position. It had sensed him somehow. Jack remained perfectly still, watching as the creature sniffed the air. After a tense moment, the cave crawler turned away and continued on its path, disappearing among the rocks. Jack released his breath slowly. His mineral pouch seemed to be working. He moved forward more cautiously now. According to his readings, he was entering an area where shadow maw sightings had been reported. The cave entrance was still 7 kilometers away, but the creature was known to hunt on the surface as well. The landscape changed as he got closer to the crash site. The ground sloped upward, and the rock formations grew taller. Ahead, Jack could see a thin trail of smoke rising into the night sky, the crashed scout ship. He quickened his pace, keeping low and moving from cover to cover. As he rounded a large boulder, he finally saw it, the scout ship, its hull crumpled and scorched. It had crashed on a flat area between 2 ridges, about half a kilometer ahead. Jack started toward it, then stopped. His scanner was picking up movement again, this time from the direction of the caves. Something very large was moving across the rocky terrain between him and the crash site. Heart pounding, Jack ducked behind a rock formation and switched his scanner to maximum range. The reading was clear. A massive life form was circling the crash site. Its movement pattern was unlike anything Jack had seen before. A fluid, ghost-like motion that seemed to flow around obstacles rather than over them. The shadow maw had found the crash site first. Jack watched through his scanner as the creature moved. It seemed to be testing the air, searching. It hadn't approached the ship directly yet, which meant the crew might still be alive inside. He had to find a way past the shadow maw to reach the ship. His mineral pouch might hide his electrical signature, but it wouldn't make him invisible. If the creature saw him or heard him, no theory would save him. Jack looked at his surroundings. The area was full of steam vents and hot springs, evidence of the geothermal activity he had been following. An idea formed in his mind, risky but possible. He took out his remaining mineral samples and the small plasma torch from his pack. It was time to test his theory about the shadow maw's weaknesses. Jack crouched behind the rock formation, watching the shadow maw through his scanner. The creature moved with unnatural grace, its large body flowing like liquid shadow across the rocky terrain. It circled the crashed ship but kept its distance, as if uncertain. Now Jack could see why the Coalition feared this predator. Even from a distance he could tell it was massive, at least 4 meters long. Its body was covered in what looked like dark plates or scales that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Only its eyes caught the moonlight, glowing with an eerie blue-green color. Jack studied the creature's movement pattern. It never stayed in one spot for long, always circling, always testing the air with what appeared to be sensory organs along its sides. But he noticed something important. It avoided the areas where steam vents erupted from the ground. Just as, I thought, Jack whispered to himself. It doesn't like the heat. He looked at the crashed ship again. The main hull was intact, which meant the crew could still be alive inside. But to reach them, he would need to cross open ground with the shadow maw between him and the ship. Jack checked his remaining supplies. He had 3 mineral samples left, his plasma torch, a medical kit, and a small emergency beacon. Not much to work with against the most dangerous predator known to the Coalition. He thought about what he knew about predators from Earth. Lions, wolves, sharks. They all had hunting patterns. They all had weaknesses. And most importantly, they all preferred easy prey over difficult ones. An idea formed in Jack's mind. It was risky, but it might work. He took out his plasma torch and one of the mineral samples. Carefully, he moved away from the crash site, circling around until he was near a large cluster of steam vents. Jack placed the mineral sample on the ground next to one of the vents. Then, using the torch, he heated the sample until it glowed red. According to his research, this would amplify the electrical signature that the Shadow Maw could detect. With the trap set, Jack moved to a new position, closer to the ship, but still hidden among the rocks. He waited, watching his scanner. It didn't take long. The Shadow Maw's head turned toward the heated mineral, its glowing eyes fixed on the location and its body tensed. Then it moved, silent and fast, toward the bait. Jack didn't waste time. As soon as the creature was moving away from the ship, he ran. His boots made little sound on the rocky ground as he sprinted toward the crashed scout ship. His heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady, focused on the task. He reached the ship and found the entry hatch partly open. Jack squeezed through the gap and found himself in a dim corridor. Emergency lights glowed weakly, casting red shadows on the walls. "Hello?" he called out. "Daniel, Lisa, this is Jack Miller from Outpost Sigma. I'm here to help." A weak voice answered from deeper in the ship. "Here, we're in the cockpit." Jack moved forward, stepping over broken panels and loose wires. The ship had taken heavy damage in the crash. He reached the cockpit and found the two crew members. Daniel Ortiz was conscious, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. His right leg was clearly broken, the bone pushing against his suit. Beside him, on what was left of the pilot's seat, lay Lisa Reeves. She was barely conscious, her face pale and drawn with pain. A piece of metal was embedded in her side, and blood had soaked through the bandages Daniel had applied. "I can't believe they sent someone," Daniel said, his voice hoarse. "We thought we'd have to wait for the rescue team." "They didn't exactly send me," Jack admitted, kneeling beside Lisa, "to check her condition. I came on my own." Daniel stared at him. "You what?" "But this area isn't safe." "The Shadow Maw—" "I know," Jack said, opening his medical kit. "It's outside right now, but I've got a plan to get us back to the outpost." He gave Lisa an injection of pain medication and applied fresh bandages to her wound. The metal fragment couldn't be removed here. She would need surgery at the outpost. Daniel's leg wasn't as bad as it looked, but he wouldn't be able to walk without help. "What's your plan?" Daniel asked as Jack worked. "The Shadow Maw avoids heat," Jack explained, "and it hunts by detecting electrical signatures. I've been using mineral samples to mask my signature, and I've been staying near geothermal vents for extra protection." Lisa's eyes fluttered open. "That's why it hasn't attacked the ship," she whispered. "The engine, still hot." Jack nodded. "Exactly. But the engine will cool eventually. We need to move while we still have time." He helped Daniel to his feet, supporting him on one side. Together they carefully lifted Lisa. She was light but barely conscious, which made moving her difficult. "We'll head toward the outpost," Jack said. "There's a path with lots of steam vents. If we stay close to them, we should be safer." They made their way to the hatch. Jack peered outside, checking his scanner. The Shadow Maw was still near the cluster of steam vents where he had left the heated mineral sample, but it was beginning to move again, circling back toward the ship. "We need to go now," Jack said urgently. "Stay close to me." They emerged from the ship into the night air of Proxima 6. Daniel hobbled beside Jack, while Lisa hung between them, her feet dragging on the ground. They moved slowly, too slowly. Jack's scanner beeped a warning. The Shadow Maw had detected movement. It was coming their way. "We need to move faster," Jack said, his voice tense. "We can't," Daniel replied, already breathing hard from the effort. "Not with Lisa like this." Jack looked back. The Shadow Maw was approaching from behind, its body low to the ground, moving with deadly purpose. It had seen them. "New plan," Jack said. He lowered Lisa gently to the ground and helped Daniel sit beside her. "Stay here." "What are you doing?" Daniel asked, grabbing Jack's arm. "Creating a distraction," Jack replied. He took out his last 2 mineral samples and his plasma torch. "When I give the signal, start moving toward that ridge." He pointed to a rocky formation about 100 meters away. "There's a path beyond it that leads toward the outpost." Before Daniel could protest, Jack was moving away from them, circling. To the right. The shadow maw paused as if confused by the separation of its prey. Jack heated one of the mineral samples with his torch, making it glow bright red. The shadow maw's head snapped toward him, its glowing eyes fixed on the heat source. Jack threw the sample as far as he could to his right, then immediately heated the second sample. The shadow maw hesitated, sensing 2 electrical sources. Jack waved his arms and shouted, "Hey, over here!" The creature turned fully toward him now, ignoring the injured crew members. It began to approach, its body moving in that strange, fluid motion. Jack backed away slowly, leading the creature away from Daniel and Lisa. When he was sure he had its full attention, he called back to Daniel. "Go now. Follow the ridge." Daniel began to move, half carrying, half dragging Lisa toward the ridge. The shadow maw didn't turn, its focus entirely on Jack and the glowing mineral in his hand. Jack continued backing away, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The shadow maw followed, closing the distance between them step by step. Jack could see its features more clearly now, the multiple rows of teeth, the sensory organs along its flanks, the powerful limbs that ended in curved claws. When the crew members had reached the ridge and disappeared from view, Jack made his move. He threw the second heated mineral sample as far as he could to the left, then turned and ran toward the nearest steam vent. The shadow maw lunged forward with shocking speed, but Jack had anticipated this. He dove to the side, rolling across the rocky ground, and came up running. He reached the steam vent just as the creature closed in. Hot vapor erupted from the ground between them. The shadow maw recoiled, making a high-pitched sound that Jack felt more than heard. He used the moment to put more distance between them, running from one steam vent to another, creating a barrier of heat that the creature seemed unwilling to cross. But Jack knew he couldn't keep this up forever. The steam vents erupted in cycles, not continuously. And the shadow maw was learning, watching him, waiting for its chance. Jack felt his energy draining as he moved from one steam vent to another. The shadow maw followed, patient and relentless. Whenever a vent stopped erupting, the creature would surge forward, forcing Jack to sprint to the next safe spot. He was running out of options. His last mineral sample was gone, and the geothermal field was thinning out as he moved away from the crash site. Soon there would be no more steam vents to protect him. Jack checked his scanner. Daniel and Lisa were moving slowly but steadily toward the outpost. They were now about 2 kilometers away. Jack needed to keep the shadow maw distracted until they were safely beyond its hunting territory. A new plan formed in his mind. If he couldn't outrun the creature, perhaps he could outsmart it. Jack studied the terrain ahead. There was a narrow ravine cutting through the rocks, with several steam vents along its edges. It wasn't ideal, but it might work. Jack waited for the next vent to erupt, then dashed toward the ravine. The shadow maw followed, its movements becoming more aggressive as it sensed its prey trying to escape. The ravine was deeper than Jack had expected, with walls about 5 meters high. He slid down the steep slope, loose rocks tumbling around him. At the bottom he found what he was looking for, a network of small cracks in the ground, all releasing thin streams of steam. The heat was intense, but bearable. The shadow maw stopped, at the edge of the ravine. It paced back and forth, its glowing eyes fixed on Jack. It seemed unwilling to follow him into the superheated area. Jack watched the creature, catching his breath. For the first time, he could observe it without running for his life. Despite his fear, he felt a surge of scientific curiosity. The shadow maw was unlike any predator he had seen before. Its body seemed to absorb light, making it difficult to see clearly even at this close distance. But Jack could make out the sensory organs along its flanks, small, pulsing structures that must be how it detected electrical signatures. The creature made that strange, high-pitched sound again, then backed away from the edge. Jack thought it was retreating, but instead, It began to move along the rim of the ravine, looking for another way down. Clever, Jack muttered. He checked his scanner again. Daniel and Lisa had covered another half-kilometer. They weren't moving fast enough. Jack needed to buy them more time. He took out his communicator and activated it. "Dr. Zorax, can you hear me?" he called. The response was immediate. "Cadet Miller, we've been trying to reach you. What is your status?" "The crew is alive," Jack reported. "Daniel has a broken leg. Lisa is more serious. She needs immediate medical attention. They're heading toward the outpost along the eastern ridge path." "And you?" Dr. Zorax asked. "Where are you?" Jack glanced up at the shadow maw still circling the ravine. "I'm keeping our local celebrity occupied, but I could use some help. Can you send a transport to these coordinates?" He sent his location data through the communicator. There was a pause before Dr. Zorax replied, his voice tense. "Cadet Miller, our sensors show the shadow maw is right on top of your position." "Yeah, we're getting to know each other pretty well," Jack said, trying to sound calmer than he felt. "But I found something important. The creature avoids heat. Not just steam vents, but any source of intense heat. This is valuable data," Dr. Zorax admitted. "But it won't matter if you don't survive to report it properly. We're preparing a rescue team now." "No," Jack said quickly. "Don't risk more people. Just send an empty transport. Program it to land at these coordinates." He sent another set of location data, about half a kilometer from his current position. "And make sure its engines are running hot." The shadow maw had found a less steep section of the ravine and was carefully making its way down. Jack backed away, moving deeper into the network of steam cracks. "The transport is on its way," Dr. Zorax said. "Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. "I'll try to stay alive until then," Jack replied, signing off. The shadow maw reached the bottom of the ravine and approached cautiously. The steam seemed to bother it, but not enough to keep it away completely. It tested each step, avoiding the hottest spots. Jack retreated further, but he was running out of space. The ravine narrowed ahead, and the steam vents were becoming fewer. He needed a new strategy. He remembered his plasma torch. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but it generated heat. Jack took it out and adjusted it to its highest setting. The blue flame extended about 30 centimeters from the handle. The shadow maw advanced, growing bolder as it adapted to the heat. Jack held his ground, torch extended. When the creature came within range, he swung the torch in a wide arc. The shadow maw recoiled from the flame, making that strange sound again. Jack used the opportunity to move past the creature, heading back toward the wider part of the ravine. The shadow maw turned to follow, but more cautiously now, wary of the torch. For several tense minutes they engaged in a dangerous dance, Jack waving the torch to keep the creature at bay, the shadow maw testing for weaknesses, looking for an opening. Jack's arm grew tired and the torch's power cell was draining fast. Then Jack heard it, the distant hum of an approaching transport. The shadow maw heard it too, its head turned toward the sound, then back to Jack, as if making a decision. The transport appeared over the ravine, its engines glowing hot as it descended toward the landing coordinates Jack had provided. The shadow maw looked up at it, then back at Jack. To his surprise, the creature backed away, retreating up the slope of the ravine and disappearing over the rim. Jack didn't waste time wondering why. He climbed out of the ravine and ran toward the transport. The door opened automatically as he approached. He jumped inside, and the transport immediately lifted off, following its programmed return path to the outpost. As they flew over the terrain, Jack spotted Daniel and Lisa on the ridge path. The transport descended next to them, and Jack helped them aboard. Lisa was unconscious now, her breathing shallow. "Will she make it?" Daniel asked as they took off again. "She's tough," Jack said, "and we've got good doctors at the outpost." When they arrived at Outpost Sigma, a medical team was waiting. They rushed Lisa to the infirmary, with Daniel following on a hovering stretcher. Jack was left standing on the landing pad, exhausted but alive. Dr. Zorax approached him, all four eyes studying him with an expression Jack couldn't read. "You disobeyed direct orders," the professor said. "You risked your life, and potentially others." "I know," Jack replied, "but they needed help now, not in 12 hours. Dr. Zorax was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your understanding of the Shadow Maw's behavior was remarkable. How did you know about its aversion to heat?" "I studied the data," Jack explained. "All the encounters happened in cooler areas. The creature's territory stops where geothermal activity increases. And I noticed something else. It's intelligent. It weighs risks versus rewards. When the transport showed up, it decided I wasn't worth the trouble anymore." "Like many apex predators," Dr. Zorax said thoughtfully. "Exactly," Jack agreed. "The Shadow Maw isn't a monster. It's just an animal doing what animals do, hunting efficiently and avoiding unnecessary risks." Dr. Zorax's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "You humans have a unique perspective. Where we see unstoppable monsters, you see animals that can be understood." "We were prey before we were predators," Jack said simply. "Some things you don't forget." Later that day, word came from the infirmary. Lisa's surgery had been successful. She would recover. Daniel's leg was already being mended by the medical equipment. Jack sat in the common area, sipping a hot drink when Olivia joined him. "So," she said, sitting across from him, "you confronted the beast and lived. How does it feel to be the first person to face the Shadow Maw and survive to tell about it?" Jack smiled tiredly. "Honestly, I'm just glad we all made it back. Dr. Zorax is writing a new paper about the Shadow Maw based on your observations," Olivia told him. "He's even named you as a co-author." Jack shook his head in disbelief. From insubordination to co-author in one day. Not bad. "He still says you're the most reckless cadet he's ever taught," Olivia added with a smile. "Probably," Jack admitted. "But sometimes you have to ignore warnings and get close to understand something properly." Through the viewports, the red landscape of Proxima 6 glowed in the setting suns. Somewhere out there, the Shadow Maw continued its solitary existence, no longer an unknowable monster but a creature that could be understood. And if understood, perhaps one day, it could be approached safely, studied properly, and respected for what it was, not a beast but simply another marvel of the universe.